Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here to have the opportunity to share my thoughts and learnings about performance with GraphQL, specifically in a service mesh. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Robert Hostlowsky, working at Instana, an IBM company. And in 2016, I gave a talk about GraphQL and Relay. Later in 2018, I published this video course about a full-stack Trello clone on top of GraphQL. But then in 2019, I found a subtle performance issue in this live demo application, which brings all this rolling. And so, but let's first dive into and see what do we mean with distributed mesh. So actually, we don't have only one service, but typically our landscape from our infrastructure looks like this. So, of course, there can be one or two machines going down and so on, but this is typically handled. But what is then happening on the service level? And here also, this is typically how service mesh looks like when you look into it and have a representation of the traffic of the communication. And also here, there are, of course, many communications running, and this is typically not good visible if you have not such a tool. But first, let's ask the question, why is performance monitoring necessary? Yeah, it's quite simple. Users don't like to wait. And typically when we have today a service mesh, or at least some service is used, maybe this is a third-party tool for a payment service or anything like this, then typically other services depend on that, and this needs to somehow be tracked. And in case of a failure, of course, should be easily found and fixed. Why is this important? Typically today, when APIs are the center of a business, for instance, then also here it's very important that timings are as expected. So nobody wants to wait for something and later find out it was not their fault, but somebody else. And even while there might have been a contract, a so-called SLA, where you define a specific service needs to be react in some time. And if it does not, that's where some other has a problem and the business has a problem at the end. But let's come to investigating a real performance issue. As I mentioned, I had a problem with my live demo at that time. It's a simple Kanban board with some database transactions or a backend where you have some data stored, of course, but also at that time, the transaction or the communication with the database was GraphQL. So for some reason, it was very slow, but on other times it was very fast. So I had really, I couldn't say where the problem is, but sometimes it was really, really slow. And there's already the tool out there, or it was there, it was called Apollo Engine. It was quite simple to just add an API key into the Apollo server when using the Apollo server library. And then it automatically tracks these metrics and showed them here in the board. So you can see here, this is the variance, let's say, or the spectrum of the response times up to 13 seconds for a call, which of course is not acceptable. And there were some more information like on the right side, the number of queries and so on. This was a year ago. In the meantime, they improved their service and also have some tracing built in, which can also be very easily enabled. And for a specific freemium service, it's also quite easy and doesn't cost anything. So, but this at that time also gave me a little bit of information. And I also had the chance to use Instana, and Instana combines these traces for the communication of services together with infrastructure metrics and also with UEM, so with the end user monitoring. And by the way, it's implementing OpenTelemetry, the latest standard. this area. So how do we get there? It's quite simple at the end. Finally, to get also the information of the user and what the user is doing, we just inject here EUM snippet in the website. Then the GraphQL query can collect all the data, how even JavaScript errors and so on. And even a specific request you can find here. And when tracking down, we find the view to backend trace. There at the end also there show up then the GraphQL query. And on the right side you see there's some meta information of the operation and so on. And yeah, we can also do some more analytics on the counts of queries and so on. And so but nowadays my application also runs in Netlify functions, which at the end run on AWS Lambda. So how can we track that? It's quite easy, just using here this Instana wrapper. And with this, I was able to monitor the application, the Apollo application server here, as we saw in the slide before. So finally, what was the real problem? At the end, I figured out that the real small thing was that I used at that time GraphQL service backend, which used this freemium plan. So that was the only problem. Summary, it's quite easy. Apollo Studio is great for managing the GraphQL schema, but Instana is a full-blown observability with all these extra features, and it enables a left shifting for giving developers a full context of their running application in production. So this makes it also very efficient to find any root cause. I would say, let me say thank you very much for listening. And for any questions, please reach me at Twitter at airhosts or at email robert.hostlowsky@instana.com. And of course, I hope to see you and meet you at the conference chat. Thank you very much.